Thank you for listening to the Aspiring for More podcast. I'm your host, Geramita, and it is my personal mission to give you guys the best tips and tricks of the trade from the mouths of those doing it right alongside you in the trenches, other local entrepreneurs who have been around and can give us their wisdom and insight to help us grow our businesses. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm sure it will not disappoint. So this was a podcast I was really excited to do with Brian Slawin. He is a mentor and investor in startups and all-around doers in the Erie and Pennsylvania area. And he does this by being the director and portfolio manager at a company called Ben Franklin Technology Partners. You may have heard of them, you may not have, but either way, we're going to learn about them today in this podcast, as well as a lot of other things, talking about the diversity in Erie and how that needs to change to produce a more healthy environment for entrepreneurs to grow and Erie to become a better city in general. He is super optimistic about the city that we all live in and challenges the question on why Erie. We get into that and a lot of other stuff in this podcast. I hope you guys enjoy it and that it's super insightful for you as much as it was for me. So sit back and enjoy this podcast with Brian Slawin. Hey, Brian, thanks for being on the show. How are you doing?
Lewis, doing great. Thanks for inviting me and excited to tell you a little bit more about what's going on entrepreneurially and startup-y in the northwest of Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Yeah, and you seem like when you first reached out about doing the interview, I was like really excited because you seemed like such a perfect mix for the podcast and what I'm doing here to kind of help Erie entrepreneurs grow. But before we get into that, let's just lay out a little bit of who you are for the people listening who might not know you, kind of get an idea of who you are.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Brian Slawin. I'm the Regional Director and Portfolio Manager for the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, Central and Northern Pennsylvania. My offices are located in Erie, and I'm broadly responsible, along with our entire team, is responsible for startups and supporting entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial environment in the Northwest Pennsylvania area. Ben Franklin CNP for Central and Northern Pennsylvania has a footprint that extends from Erie through State College down to Harrisburg, over to Lancaster, and then over to Johnstown. So we cover a pretty broad swath of the middle of the state. Frankly, 32 of the 67 counties in all of Pennsylvania are ours. So we touch a lot of people, do a lot of very interesting things, and I'm excited to share what we do at Ben Franklin with you and your audience.
Awesome. And now, before we get into a little bit of what Ben Franklin is doing and all that, I kind of want to get your perspective on Erie in general. One of the things that's very inspiring about you is how freakishly optimistic you are about the city of Erie. And personally, I like to look at myself as an optimist, but I will say that I've complained a time or two about the city. Just kind of give me a layout of why you dedicated a whole TEDx talk about why Erie.
So, a little bit about my background. I'm a tech entrepreneur, a serial tech entrepreneur. The last company that I founded, exited in May of 2015, was kind of just kicking around my home in St. Louis, Missouri, and realized that I loved being around entrepreneurs, that I had some experiences to share, and was really looking to get on the more venture investor side of the table. So started looking around, found the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, threw my resume in, interviewed, and landed this amazing opportunity to come here to Erie and the northwest of Pennsylvania to really have an impact on the kinds of things that Ben Franklin has been doing, frankly, for nearly 40 years, which is find, support, and invest in great entrepreneurs with really interesting ideas. My time here has been very short. I showed up in Erie in December of 2015, so it's barely more than 3 years that I've been here. And what I've found is an amazing community of people, all of whom are looking at the horizon, all of whom are recognizing that there are challenges, but that's the best thing to be, is in a place where there are challenges and you can actually do something about it. It would be horrible to be in a place that was nirvana and there was nothing to do other than just live your lives. We actually get to make an impact every single day. The things that we do and the partners that we work with, from the mayor of our city to everybody on his staff and throughout the community, really working on a number of very important things that will hopefully set the stage for the next generations of growth here in Erie. So it's a privilege, it's a thrill, and it's really just very exciting to be here doing the work we do.
And that's, yeah, really interesting that you were talking about the challenges in Erie. So would you agree that a lot of the people that complain about Erie have valid points and that it's just the beauty of the challenge? Or would you say a lot of them just are looking way too deep into things and just need to kind of get their head out of the sand and enjoy what's around them?
Well, that's a really good question. I would never diminish anyone's complaint as in, hey, dude, just look around you. There are certainly valid questions about the future of our community. So, the school district, how are we going to make that a world-class school district so that we can recruit the type of talent that Erie will need for the next generations and beyond, who can have their children raised and educated in a way that fosters that continued growth. We certainly have issues related to, becoming a world-class city. We have one of the most underutilized bayfronts, according to some folks who know about this kind of thing, that they've ever seen. We have challenges related to diversity and inclusion, and making sure that a rising tide, in fact, does float all boats. And there are several others. And the Mayor Joe Schember, clearly outlines these on the City of Erie website, what his 5 major points of focus are. That's a privileged place to be, that we can actually work collectively, collaboratively, as a team to identify and address these issues, and then come up with the plans to actually do something about it. So I wouldn't say people are overly, examining their navel. I think the things that people are thinking about and complaining about are valid. But okay, great. So then what? Well, you got to do something about it, right? It's part of my entrepreneurial nature that if there's a problem or an opportunity or something that we should be doing something about, well, then let's do something about it. Complaining is just, that's not enough.
And that's something that, from what I've learned over the years of just watching my parents build their business and whatnot, is optimism is one of the key factors in my mind of success for your startup or your business. If you're a person that's constantly negative and not looking for a way to find a solution, the chances that your business is going to take off are lessened than if you're more of an optimistic person.
Sure, and who wants to be around that person, right? Who wants to be around the person where the sky is always falling? No one. No one wants to be around that person. So I find it's just easier to say, okay, recognize the challenge, and then move on. It's really the work that we do at the Ben Franklin Technology Partners that, so people come to me, and I'm in a privileged position. They come to our organization, and every single day, 2-3 different people will approach us and say, hey, I've got an idea about a thing. And I've got experience, or I don't have experience, or I have a team, or I don't have a team. And we walk through with them, what are the gaps in the necessary elements to take your idea to market and then make it grow and hire people and have an economic impact. So I'm continuously looking at how can we leverage the resources that Ben Franklin has in order to make companies, people grow. And so by nature, I and the rest of my colleagues are always looking at the positive side. Okay, cool. So you don't have a technology expert. What are we going to do about that? You're going to hire one, you're going to rent one, you're going to become one. It's always what's next and how do you overcome the next hurdle. That's just a more fun place to be.
And along with that and finding people to fill the gaps, so that kind of seems like that's probably the biggest part of what you do, is that filling the gaps, mentoring. But when it comes to filling gaps, what are like, one, is Erie a diverse enough city to have people to fill every gap? Do you think that there's enough range to hire within the city, or do you feel like they're more singularly focused in their skill set and knowledge?
Yeah, you really pointed to a super important aspect of how Erie goes forward. So I talk about this with my friend Carl Sanchak, who runs the Erie Innovation District, all the time about talent and the gap in talent. There are a tremendous amount of talented people in Erie, and we need more. And so, likely for the next time period, we'll need to import talent to our community in order to fill some of the gaps that we see. Specifically in technology, we just need more technology builders who can actually help our companies grow. So there will come a time where we don't have to import as much as we probably do today. Some of the things that are going on right now, just recently announced a $500,000 program that is going to train Erie School District children on the skills necessary to become cyber technology warriors. Basically, those folks who are going to graduate high school, go to college either at Gannon University or Mercyhurst or Penn State, and they're going to learn the necessary skills to become part of this digital economy. That starts in high school. And this $500,000 program is just one of the many, many efforts designed to focus in that area. So we're going to have to import for a while we're training, and then there will be eventually be a time when we're going to have enough of that talent here locally.
Now, how would you import some talent into a city where it almost seems like you said in your one TEDx talk, like this is the only city where people are like, well, why are you here? Almost like in a condescending way, like you could have chose anywhere, why Erie? How do you offer somebody something big, like valuable enough to make them want to move from where they're at to come to Erie?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm going to basically steal our Mayor Schember's 5 points, right? So first, the kind of people who are going to be attracted to Erie want to live and work in a diverse culture. Mm-hmm. We want to have people of women, men, color, internationals, gender, sexual orientation. I mean, diversity really is the key to such successful companies throughout the world. If you look at the most successful companies on the planet, they're incredibly diverse, and they have a number of inclusion or inclusive policies that make everyone's contribution welcomed. Secondly, talking about welcoming vibrant neighborhoods. So I live in the West Bayfront. It's an awesome place to live, and there are other amazing neighborhoods within our community. The East Side, the Bayfront East Side Task Force, and the Sisters of St. Joseph Network up in Little Italy, and there are other places. We have to create and continue to create welcoming and vibrant neighborhoods. A world-class downtown and Bayfront, right? You're starting to see that with what the work that the Erie Downtown Development Corporation is doing by revitalizing a variety of buildings and other living spaces and other common spaces, public spaces that center on Perry Square and spread out throughout the universities, Gannon being the main downtown university, out to Mercyhurst and beyond. That is a welcoming place, a place where it's really world-class entertainment and world-class opportunities. Of course, we want to have schools of excellence. That's the core of everything. Our Erie School District needs to become that sort of diamond in the rough that it is today and realize its full potential. We can't afford to throw away a generation of students just because we're struggling through some issues right now. The superintendent, Brian Polito, is working through that. There are members of his staff that have a lot of conversations with. There are support organizations like the Foundation for Erie's Public Schools that are focused on creating schools of excellence. And then finally, if we do all those things right, we'll have an abundance of family-sustaining jobs. Meaning you can actually be in Erie, grow up in Erie, move to Erie, and have a lifestyle that will foster and support the growth of your family. That's really what this community is about. As you look around, I mean, you see these families, they've been here forever, and there's hundreds or thousands of them, all with the same last name or all with the same lineage. And it's a really beautiful experience when you get around some of these families. I'm going to name one, but I could name hundreds. Dick Wachter and Mary Beth Wachter have this great broad spread family of just the most wonderful people doing the most interesting things. And it's families like that that really make our community great. And we need to have great jobs here to support them. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's really what the Ben Franklin Technology Partners are all about, is creating that wonderfully abundance of family-sustaining jobs.
And something about the Ben Franklin thing, you were talking a little bit ago, how you're talking like to 2 to 3 people a day or a week or however often. How many different people that are like have never come to Ben Franklin before do you have coming to you with their ideas? How to kind of, the reason for the question is the entrepreneurial like spark and fire still in the city? Do you see that with all these new people, or is it like the same people like, hey, how about this idea? How about this idea? How about this idea?
So literally hundreds a year of people, different people, will come to us at Ben Franklin and to other entities in the community, but speaking specifically for Ben Franklin, literally hundreds a year. I have hundreds of conversations every year, dozens of conversations every week with people who have a very well-formed idea, or they're just kicking tires and they just need to get some perspective on where to go and what to do next. We're really blessed with an abundance of rich and broad spread support for people starting businesses. So as an example, someone will approach me and I ask the basic questions and try to understand where they're at. If I can accelerate their idea within Ben Franklin, then we do, right? We go along our due diligence process and we ultimately support and invest in that company, and off they go. Sometimes the person's not ready. There are too many gaps to fill. They're not exactly sure what they want to do. They can't commit full time to doing it. So what we do is we take what I call the no wrong door approach. It doesn't matter whose door you first step through, because someone within our economic development system is going to, the very next introduction that they make is going to be the right place for you to land. So a great example for the way it works at Ben Franklin is, let's say the company is too early, the person's too early, and they're just not ready for investment and acceleration. We've got an abundance of choices. They could go to the Co-Starters program. That's co.starters in Erie, if you Google that, Co-Starters. And they can learn the basic steps of how to build a business. Or perhaps they've already gone through Co-Starters, or they're maybe a little more advanced. And so now they go to the Small Business and Development Center, the SBDC at Gannon, and they work with Maggie Horn and her team. And they work through the various business planning processes that are necessary to accelerate. Or maybe they're an advanced manufacturer and they've already got their stuff all together, and they're looking for a facility, or perhaps they're looking for different kinds of capital. We can direct them to the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnership and an amazing leader, um, Jake Rao, who has been at this for decades and who puts his all into really helping companies, and folks like Katrina Vincent and Rick Novotny, who can access different kinds of capital structures and really help the company grow. Or there's um, Jimmy Jackson over at Bridgeway Capital, who can help people with various funding needs. So, and it goes on and on and on. Those are, I don't know, half a dozen of the various resources. We really do have a tremendous amount of resources in our community to help people move their idea forward.
So then it just comes to mind to ask the question, if there's so many resources and hundreds of people a year coming to you, why aren't we seeing such a big influx of new businesses being started? Maybe there are and I'm just not aware of them, but is it just closing those gaps is so hard in Erie with the diversity? Or what is that hurdle that's stopping these hundreds of people from taking their idea to the market?
Well, so building a business is hard,
For
right?
sure.
So it's not an easy. I know you're doing that right now. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do a business, but I would say that there's a lot more business going on in Erie, especially the entrepreneurial sort of startup ventures, than most people are aware of. So organizations like mine, first of all, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that I talk with every year, but at the end of the day, we have limited funds, and we can only invest in a dozen or so that will be able to not only put capital into, but also, and frankly, the more important thing that we do is we get them to work with us through what's known as the Transformation Business Services Network. That's a group dedicated and focused on helping companies fill the gaps and grow. But there's a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial activity in, a guy opens a garage, right? He's going to fix cars, or a woman opens up a restaurant, or other people open up various stores or various services businesses or those kinds of things. There's really a lot of entrepreneurial activity that's going on, and all of it doesn't make the newspaper. So you're correct. It's difficult to sort of hear and see all of that stuff because some of it's just a guy in his garage and he's fixing cars and he's feeding his family and his kids are going to school, and that's just as valid and just as important as the companies that I work with, that the other folks in our community work with as well.
So if someone's listening to this and they never started a business before and they just got an idea in their head, what would be the top 5 questions, in your opinion, that they should ask themselves to see if their business has any legs or any ability to move forward?
Yeah, super great question, and I'll give you the ones that I always ask. Why are you doing this? What's the burning passion that you have for this? Is this one of those, it came to you in an aha moment? Or have you been thinking about this literally forever and you can't go to sleep at night because you just can't stop thinking about it? So tell me a little bit about why. What is your why for wanting to do this business? Second thing is, are you able to, and if not now, when are you able to dedicate your full-time attention to this business? It may not be now. It may have to wait. You may have to be doing this sort of on nights and weekends until you can put your full, grow it to a point where you can put your full attention to it. So that would be the next thing, is startups of any kind really do need somebody paying their full attention to it. The third thing is, what does your support network look like? Does your husband or your wife or your significant others, do they believe in you in doing this, and will they stand behind you while you do it? Because this is hard. I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world to quit your job and go off and do some crazy thing like start up a company. So you're going to have a network that supports you and has given you the freedom that things at home will be taken care of and things with the children or the family or the friends will be taken care of. There were many, many, many times that I missed activities or showed up in the third inning of a softball game because I was trying to build a company. So having that understanding supportive network, super, super critical. The next thing that I would make sure is they understand the market, right? Every entrepreneur thinks that they have the world's greatest idea, and they may, but there also may be other people who are in the exact same space doing the exact same sorts of things. So what's the competitive market look like? And probably more importantly, what about your customers? What are your customers, the people who will actually pay for your thing? What are they saying about your idea? Will they pay for it? Will they pay for it at an amount that will be, profitable for you? So really understanding the market and your potential customers is really super important. And then finally, probably, I'm not sure the most important thing, but certainly in the top 5, can you do it? Like, can you actually do it? Right? Do you have the skill set necessary to do the thing that you're trying to do? Right? If you don't understand computers and you've got a great idea for a thing that runs on software, you might want to think that through a little bit, right? Who are you going to get to help you? Are you more the marketing and the business person? Cool. You're going to need a technologist to help you. So really understanding who you are as it relates to that business is super important. So those would be the first 5. There's 50 others questions to follow, but those would certainly be my top 5.
Yeah, number 5, you can really go into a whole bunch of rabbit trails of just like figuring out like yourself and have a good idea of like actually what am I good at, and having people coming around you is so important to be that like know you well, and some that might not even know you well and just be like, hey dude, you stink at this, or hey gal, you stink at this. And to actually have a good awareness of where your strengths are is really important, because I know sometimes I can just think that, oh, I got all of it covered, I can do it all, but really there's a lot of shortcomings I have that will help me speed and grow faster if I just am aware of them and address them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's a really great book called Good to Great, written by Jim Collins. And in Good to Great, there's something called the hedgehog. Excuse me. I'm going to sneeze. The hedgehog. All right. Clearly, I'm allergic to hedgehogs. The hedgehog principle. The idea behind the hedgehog principle is, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And can you make money at that? And if the answer to all 3 of those is I'm good at this, I'm passionate about it, and yes, I can make money, then you're on to the right path.
That's good. Now, in brief summary of just the things that you ran through, it's the why do you want to do it? 2, when can you go full time? 3, the support, what does that look like? 4, do you truly know your market as well as you think you do? And 5, can you physically do it, or what do you need? But the one that really stood out to me is number 3, is what does your support look like? Yeah. And with everything that I talked about in my last podcast and with you, Erie has a lot of people who can be negative and complain. So if you're someone who finds yourself in a support group with people that are negative and complain, whether it be your wife or friends, current coworkers, because the odds are probably pretty high if that's a staple of Erie, what are you to do with that support group? Because I've heard people talk about just cut them out and move on with your life. But like, if you're married to them, like, do you just get a divorce, move forward? Like what does that look like?
Don't do that. That is not a good plan.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The answer to that question is different for the type of person that you're talking about. So if it's your spouse or significant other, and you really, really, really trust them, then you really need to understand, where is their doubting coming from? Is it related to you? Like, listen, you've never been able to do this. You've tried 50 times. I've seen you struggle. Why do you think 51 is going to work for you? Or is it coming from a place of fear from them? In other words, my dad tried to start a business and we lost our house. Okay, cool. I'm not your dad, or I'm not your mom, or whatever. So you really have to understand where that negativity is coming from. And if you can manage that negativity, or you can turn that from a negative into, listen, here's the structure around which I can make this comfortable for you. So, as an example, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to give this a year. And we know that we have enough money to last for a year, and our children are of an age or whatever that this can work for a year. And yeah, I'm going to miss a few things, but only for a year. And at the end of that year, or 6 months, or 1 month, or whatever it is, here are the things that say go or no go. So if at the end of that time period, I've accomplished this list of things, we'll continue forward. And we'll reset our plan and try for another year. If not, then I'm going to stop and I'm going to go back to getting a real job and doing whatever. So you really have to get yourself ready and prepared for that. And you've got to be completely transparent with your spouse or significant other or whomever, that here's my fears, here's my strengths, here's what I'm going to count on you for. Can we come to an agreement and set up a structure to do that? That's super important. In terms of friends, it's really kind of the same conversation, but you have an easier out. So with friends or coworkers or others in the community, you can sort of ignore their negative Nelly. It's good for you to understand where it's coming from. Like, your friends probably know you slightly differently than you know yourself. And so they may have some insights for you, but always listen for where is that negativity coming from. If it's this sort of broad, well, Erie stinks and it's always bad, blah, 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 it's like, well, okay, that's one level of negativity that you can work your way through. If it's, I've seen you try to do this 50 times and this is 51, why do you think it's different? Then that's a different kind of negativity that you can work your way through as well. So somewhat similar, but obviously the marriage and who you're married to is a lot more important, because at the end of the day, that's who you come home to, and you got to make sure that that person's on your side.
No, that's definitely some great walkthroughs that people can, I think, probably learn from, because it's insightful to me. Now,
good.
With the 5, so someone goes through the 5 steps, they ask themselves the questions, they feel like they've got a good answer to all of them, but they lack capital. What is something that makes a business or just an idea more desirable to someone like you, who would then invest in one of those dozen companies to help them get off the ground? Sure.
So it's extraordinarily rare, as a matter of fact, I've never had it happen, that you get an idea invested in. So, we've all seen the Facebook movie, and we've all seen, heard these stories. He had an idea on a napkin and someone wrote him $1 million check. Well, it just doesn't happen that way. I mean, I know that's sort of the popular myth. It just doesn't happen. And it especially doesn't happen that way in an economy that may be tighter on capital. So the best thing to do is, first of all, you got to start with, there's something called the business model canvas. Work your way through the business model canvas and make sure you have really solid answers for each of the 9 squares in the business model canvas. By the way, this is what Co-Starters does over the course of 10 weeks. You work your way through working this business idea out. So again, Co-Starters in Erie, you'll find they've got a Facebook page, there's a website. The Innovation Collaborative is the main sponsor and host. Co-Starters, it's a great program for taking your idea and shaping it in such a way that it now becomes a business that you can execute on. That's step one. Step two would then be go to the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center at Gannon, and take what's called their First Step program. So first step I think it's 3 hours, gives you a 101 on how do you do a business. So you've come through co-starters, you've worked through the business model canvas. Now you kind of drink from a fire hose in 3 hours at the SBDC. And after you've done all of that, if you're still convinced that, yep, this is an idea and my support network is there and I'm ready to go, then you go. And so capital, it's typically going to come from you first and maybe some friends and family next. And then once you've got a prototype or you've built your first model, or heck, maybe you're already selling it, now you just want to go faster, that's when you can approach organizations like Ben Franklin, Bridgeway Capital, potentially your bank if you're bankable, and some other resources like the city of Erie actually has capital that you can go access. They've got a really great not a loan program, it's a grant program called the Flagship Grant Program through the city, and on and on. You will find money if you take those first 3 or 4 steps. Money will be available to you as you go forward. One of the sources of capital that I'm super excited about is something called the Idea Fund. It's run by Rebecca Stein at Erie Management Group. And the Idea Fund has 3 core programs. One program is called the Starting Line. And think of it kind of like an extended Shark Tank, where you will submit your idea, you'll put together a presentation, you'll pitch that in front of a panel of judges, and at the end of the day, you could be awarded one of 4 $5,000 grants, one for minorities, one for women, one for veterans, and one for a judge's choice. And depending on the kind of company that you're bringing forward, Ben Franklin can also provide a $10,000 seed grant. So capital is there. It's available in the community. You just have to work on your idea and make sure you know your market first.
Yeah, it seems like money is probably not hard to find as long as you actually have a good idea to bring out to market.
Yeah, idea and execution, right? Everyone wants to see that you're all in, that you've got skin in the game, that you've put your own capital into it, that you are serious about it, that you've gotten to a prototype, or that you've gotten this, advanced in a way that you actually can accelerate the idea and, and with some real capital behind it, actually do a thing.
Now, another thing that another just topic I want to dive into is different industries in Erie that seem to be more, I don't want to say easy, but more prevalent in the area. I know in an article you were in on the Erie Reader, you talked about a vision called the 10, 100,000 to a million, talking about tech startups. Why do you think, one, Erie would be a great tech city, as well as what are some other industries you see in Erie already growing rapidly that might not be a bad idea to kind of go into?
Yeah, so it's not only do I think Erie is a great tech city and it's a tech city on the uprise, but there are people who are super smart and have put a ton of money behind the idea that Erie is a tech city and we just need to develop it. So a great example is what's going on at the Erie Innovation District. I mentioned this earlier, and the work that Carl Sanchak and his team are putting together. This past summer, 9 tech startups came from quite literally all over the world to incubate and accelerate here in Erie. And 5 of those companies are still here. And 3 of them, Ben Franklin invested in. We're actually talking with the 4th right now. So it's companies like that and initiatives like that that were funded by the Erie Regional Chamber and the Erie County Gaming and Revenue Authority, which is led by Perry Wood, the Community Foundation, which is led by Mike Batchelor, and a number of other funders, put capital at risk, $4 million worth, to actually transform Erie and say, hey, we can actually become a great tech community. So two things I think are necessary, and my friend Sean Fedorko jokes about this all the time, but he says there's two things necessary to make Erie a great tech community: craft beer and Thai food. And we have both of those. So it's going to be a great place. And I'm joking. Sean's joking too, but it is kind of fun. So one of the nice things about Erie's heritage is that we are a manufacturing focused community. All right. Well, manufacturing is going through a complete transformation and renaissance today, becoming much more technology enabled and focused. Um, if you look at something called the industrial IoT, so industrial Internet of Things, it's really applying technology to manufacturing processes to be better, faster, cheaper, so that Erie companies can compete with Chinese and other overseas entities in a even if not better than even way. So there's a ton of technology being applied to manufacturing. That's a great sign. And I think it's super exciting for organizations like mine and our community in general to see the kind of technology that's being built addressing cyber issues. You know, we've got two great universities here that are really laser focused on cybersecurity, Mercyhurst University and Gannon. And, you know, the things going on at Penn State, leveraging sensor development for industrial IoT. It's a really, really exciting time, and a lot of capital, a lot of effort are behind this techification, if you will, of Erie.
So now, would you say the takeaway for the reason why it's happening in Erie is because Erie has something special to offer, or is it just, hey, it can work here too?
No, I think we have something super special to offer. First of all, you start with four great universities in the community.
Mm-hmm.
You have these folks who are super smart, who are training the next generation of technologists. I mean, literally, I'm sitting on the West Bayfront, a 15-minute drive in multiple different directions, and I can be at the heart of any of the great schools that we have in our community who are training these amazingly talented people to become, again, these next generation of technologists. So that is a huge advantage. The community also has the will. So if you look at the kind of private industry support, and I'm going to be very specific and talk about Erie Insurance and the kinds of things that they stand behind, you look at the kind of folks that are here working at Erie Insurance and then lending their skills to the general community. I think it's incredibly impressive that Erie Insurance provides that. You know, General Electric Transportation, which is now going to be Wabtec very soon, they have a world-class research and development and technology center located, again, within 10 minutes drive from where I'm sitting. I think it's 800, it might even be more than that, technologists in our community who are doing their work every day and lending their expertise to the community of startups and others. We've got organizations like Code Erie who are putting together monthly meetups where technologists come and they talk about issues and opportunities and things working. You talk about Radius Cowork, really the center of gravity for the startup and entrepreneurial community, heavy tech influence. So I think there's something unique and special about what's going on in Erie related to technology. It's not a, yeah, we can do it here, because Erie has really carved out some very specific areas in med tech, in finance tech or fintech, manufacturing technology, and some cyber technology as well that I think we're really going to excel in over the next decades.
That's super encouraging to hear. So we have what it takes, and we have something special. It just, like, kind of going back to that first point, keeping people here and enticing people with those skill sets to stay in Erie and also see these potentials that you just laid out.
Yeah, it's really the mayor's 5 points. If we can build a community that is world class, a city of choice, like I choose to be in or stay in Erie, we'll be just fine. And that's what we're all working towards, is making sure that that is the kind of community we live in, a truly diverse and inclusive community that offers opportunity to everybody across the economic strata, that allows them to realize their dreams and move into their vision of the future, and then make sure that we are setting up the structures so that everyone can leverage that. I'm super privileged to be part of a program called the People's Supper, which is being run out of the mayor's office by someone I consider a very good friend, Michael Outlaw. And the entire mayor's staff has put huge amounts of effort into bringing our community together in a way that allows everyone's ideas to flourish and see the light of day. And once you set that level playing field, and we've got a ways to go, we're not even close to having a level playing field. But one day when we have that, and everyone's idea can be heard and their opportunities fostered, gosh, can you imagine? I mean, it's just mind blowing what we can do with all of that. So I cannot think of a better place to be positioned. An amazing outdoor environment, people who actually care, the kinds of things going on. It's an amazing place. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know, did you read my on Valentine's Day, a love letter to Erie?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so it's on my Facebook. You can search probably for Brian Slawin, and you can find it. But it's really a love letter to Erie, and it talks about all of the things. It's kind of like, geez, Erie, where have you been all of my life? I've come here and really discovered an amazing place.
Now, you said, and I'll have to go and read that letter after this, but you were saying about a level playing field. We're not close to that. Were you talking about Erie specifically, or just the world in general, kind of, when you said that?
Well, I mean, I think the world in general, but I'm talking, as this podcast is about Erie specifically. So I attended an event yesterday on Sunday. I drove down to Meadville, which is a community about 45 minutes south of Erie, called Meadville Speaks. And it was focused on the Black experience in America, or Black life in America. And one of the speakers, just like hit me in the head, right in the middle of my head, with this idea of being white and woke. So the idea between being white and woke, right? Like, being white and woke isn't enough. You can't celebrate being white and woke and like, yay, we're white and we're woke and hoorah. That's not enough. You actually have to do the work. And a great example of the work being done, I keep pointing back to the mayor because the mayor and his staff are just absolutely world class. This summer, the mayor's staff knocked on 6,000 different doors in Erie and asked people about their community and what can they do, what can the mayor's staff do to make it better. That's just one example of the kinds of things that our community is beginning to rally around. This, as I mentioned earlier, the city actually has a grant program, right? That's never been done before. So it's not sufficient to be white and woke. You actually have to do the work. And our mayor is an inspiration, and our staff. I mean, I've got a number of people I consider very close friends on the mayor's staff who are doing the work, who are breaking down those barriers so that, again, a rising tide will float all boats, and they're creating that playing field so that everyone can participate.
Yeah, that's pretty. I didn't know about the whole 6,000 doors. Like, that's a pretty broad people to like grab from and understand. It'd be interesting to actually see the results of what people said could be used to improve the city. What do you think one of the biggest hurdles are and you may have already spoken onto this, and I apologize if you did, but one of the biggest hurdles for that we have that's stopping that diversity currently?
Well, again, I don't think it's an Erie thing. So
Hmm.
I'm from St. Louis, and quite literally, St. Louis is divided into North Side and South Side.
Okay.
There's a highway that runs right down the middle of the city. In the north side of it, it's generally black. On the south side of it, it's generally white. And boy, you don't catch yourself in the other neighborhood. Now, that's a gross exaggeration, but it's very,
Sure.
very diverse, or it's very gentrified, or split. That's not even the right word either. Um, so this isn't an Erie thing. The challenge we have in Erie, I believe, is that the power structure in Erie is such that we need to be more open and welcoming and inclusive of differing opinions and differing voices. And we need more women involved, and we need more people of color involved, of all different colors, right? We need more people of international backgrounds involved. We just need more people involved. And there's nothing keeping us from doing that. It's just we need to continuously be mindful of how things are today and the way we'd like them to be in the future, and make sure that we continue to invite that diversity and be open and inclusive about it. So nothing's stopping us. We just have to be mindful of it and continue to work towards it.
So yeah, that's a good reminder to everyone listening to continue to check yourself, make sure that you're producing that kind of culture. Now,
Yeah.
to kind of change pace a little bit, get back into more just
Yep.
like practical business stuff. A question I asked in the last podcast that I really liked, I wanted to bring into this one, is to ask you, what was your biggest failure that actually turned out being beneficial for you later on in life, in business?
Any of the startups that I founded and failed. So you always learn. I always try to learn from the things that didn't go as you planned. And I'm challenged by the word failure because I don't believe you do fail as long as you learn. So I forget exactly how the meme works, but it's something like, I never fail, I either succeed or I learn.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the approach that I've taken. So one of the things very early in my career was I was not the greatest manager or frankly leader of my organizations. I was really demanding, not very forgiving. I was kind of a jerk. And I think over time you start to realize that that is completely counterproductive. And being supportive and helpful and understanding and being just a human, just being a normal human, really is the way to lead. People want to be led. They want to be pointed in a direction and told march and use your skills. And I think over time I eventually learned that lesson, that it's better to be working with people than demanding of people.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Like, it's not the failure itself, but it's all the things that you learned from it that actually ended up helping you in the end. And I will say, knowing you now, I would probably have never guessed that you would have been that kind of demanding person. So you've definitely made a 180 transfer from my opinion,
Yeah,
because
well, thanks for that. And I think I've been super fortunate, and I'm super fortunate today to be working for the guy that I'm working for. His name's Steve Brawley, and I know this is going to sound like suck up, but it's truly not. He is an example of someone who really understands how to lead people.
mm,
Um, he just does a really good job of it. He's extraordinarily understanding of situations, and rather than criticizing or even critiquing, he's always asking the question, what could we do better? Or how could we learn from that? Or this X happened to company, this happened to company X. What can we do to help? He's really I mean, just a super example of the kind of leader that so many organizations need. I also get to work with a colleague of mine, John Sider. Same guy. I mean, the same idea. He's always helping and learning and showing and providing an example for us and everyone really on the staff. I'm just really fortunate to work with the people I do. They're amazing leaders. They're humanists. Super insightful. Our director of marketing, Liz Wilson, is just so insightful. She can see the potholes from a mile away. I mean, she's just really, really great. And just the kindness of the people that I work with and the smartness of them. It's a real privilege to work at Ben Franklin, and I really do love it.
And that what you're talking about is these mentors is something that personally, with going to more events, meeting more people, is something that I never really truly saw the value in, is finding people who are different than you but also better in certain areas so that you can learn. But man, it definitely makes a huge difference when you have people, rather than trying to fly solo, that you can look up to and grow from and continue on.
Yeah, well, we won't invest in a company that is a one-person company.
Oh, really?
We do not. We will not do that. Um, yeah, because the rate of failure of single-person companies is astronomically higher than one with two or three people in the company. So, yeah, we always, I say we never. I'm going to pull back on that. I can think of one example where we did. But what you just pointed out is that two minds, three minds in some cases, are way better than one. And the more diverse those minds are, the better. So if it's all women or it's all guys or it's all this or all that, that's less good than one of each. Because their life experiences are different, and the way they look at the world is different, and the way they look at problems comes from a completely different mindset. And so having a team that's incredibly diverse and that can work together in the center to figure out the issues and move forward, that's always a positive for an investor, but for the business itself.
Yeah, that's actually really cool that you said that, because that's something that I actually thought of having partners as a disadvantage, because then you're dealing with other people that have different stakes in the business. And the one quote that I've always remembered was, the one ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. And I don't know why that was something that always stuck with me, but after you saying that, I mean, it is so important to find people that will help you, because, I mean, you can't, back to point number 5 of the questions to ask yourself, can you do it? Yeah, you probably could, but can you do it as well if you had people who are specialists in their own field? But no, that's something that I definitely pulled out of this for sure.
Yeah, that you're exactly right. A bad partnership is worse than a bad marriage. So when you're thinking about a partnership, think about, can I work with this person or these two people quite literally 12 to 16 hours a day for years? I was super lucky. My last startup, I co-founded with one of the world's great guys. His name's David Schenberg. He's awesome. And he was the balance to my insanity, right? He was the calm and I was the storm. And I learned so much from him, just how to be a decent person and how to, think through problems. One of the things he taught me, and I know this is like basic, it's like duh, but sometimes you just got to learn it. He goes, when you're starting to freak out, what's the worst thing that can happen? If the worst thing that can happen is something you can work your way through, don't freak out. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen out of this situation? And frankly, most of the worst things that could ever happen weren't that bad, and they were all workable. So, I was super fortunate to know David and to get to work with him for close to a decade, and it made a huge impact on my life, positive impact on my life.
That's awesome. And I'm definitely going to be looking for more people to, one, surround myself with, and maybe even bring in, because I know for me the hard part is finding people, like in my specific business with doing alterations and stuff like that, is finding people who have that skill of sewing in men's fashion is kind of hard to find in Erie. But that's also one of those things that you're saying, either you need to foster and grow that or bring people in. But
Right. So if your strength is in the actual doing of the work, then you should probably find people who are stronger in areas where you may not be so strong.
mm-hmm.
So whether that's marketing or sales or I don't know, whatever, color selection, I'm making stuff up at this point. But it's always good to have a balance rather than an overwhelm on one side of the ship or the other. So in an emergency, your business partner can do some alterations. Like you can get the thing set up and he can do or she can do the sewing part of it, or again, making this all up.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have someone whose skills are different than yours, thinking about the same problem from a different point of view.
That's insightful for sure.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to leave it with one last question because I think this has been pretty good and productive.
Great.
And this is going to be a big one, so don't get too overwhelmed with it. But if you're in a room filled with all of Erie's entrepreneurs / business people, and you get to say one parting thing to them that everyone would hear, what would that be?
Think big. Don't be small. Don't minimize. Don't mitigate. Don't hedge your bet. Think big. And then act big. Do the big thing that's going to scare you to death. Do that thing, because at the end of the day, you're going to learn something or succeed. Either way, if you're playing a small game, you'll get a small result. So think big.
That's good. That's awesome. Didn't take you too long to think of it, so I guess it wasn't that overwhelming.
I say that one all the time. I mean, that's I say that one all the time. Think big. It's because a little bit. So I learned it from one of our investors, an investor from my old company. We were putting together financial pro forma, right, predicting the future, and we were always trying to be so specific and so conservative. And he goes, "Think big, think big." Like an investor wants to know that you can think big. Like you can make this $1 billion idea. No one wants to know you can make it a $10 million idea. Who cares? Mm-hmm. Think big. You may never get to $1 billion, but if you get to half that or a tenth of that, thinking big was the great path for you. So think big and then act big. That's the advice I give.
And it almost seems like to me that if you overshoot what you're dreaming about, you'll at least make a good dent if you don't make it. Like if I'm working every day to try and build $1 billion business, even if I don't get to the billion, I'm going to be working just as hard at 100 million rather than saying, "Hey, I just want to make $10 million from this idea."
So earlier you mentioned 10, 100, 1,000, 1 million. So what that is the idea that in the next 10 years, we're going to create 100 new companies in Erie, collectively employing 1,000 workers, and each company generating $1 million or more per year in revenue. So 10, 100, 1,000, 1 million. So as I share that with people, they're like, well, that doesn't sound like a lot. $1 million of revenue a year? I mean, that's nice, but it's not a lot. I'm like, okay, cool. So go for $1 million a month. The point is shoot for something. Think big and go after that, right? Wouldn't it be awesome if we had 100 companies generating $1 million of revenue a year? It's $100 million revenue increase in our economy. And 1,000 workers, I mean, it could be transformational if we thought about 10, 100, 1,000, 1 million. Think big. It's the only way you're ever going to get anything done.
Yeah, and that kind of vision doesn't seem like a small vision because, if I'm correct, it's only a part of the bigger vision of changing Erie and growing it. So, I mean, yeah, a 1 million per company might not seem like, oh, it could be $1 billion, but that's only one stepping stone towards the bigger dream to help Erie become better, grow, and be the city that it has the potential of being.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Now you say 100 companies. How close, like how many tech companies would you say we have to date for that goal to become?
Well, so Ben Franklin annually invests, and this is just in Northwest PA, annually invests between 7 to 12 or 8 to 12 tech companies or small manufacturers. So I'm not saying only tech companies, I'm saying companies, right? And kind of specifically, not so selfishly because of the way Ben Franklin is mandated to invest. I think about technology companies and small manufacturers.
Okay.
There are a ton of great services companies that fall into this as well, right? They count. But I'm specifically talking about tech and small manufacturers. So 10 years, 100 tech/small manufacturers, 1,000 employees, and $1 million to each company. So annually, we invest in, 8 to 12 different companies. So kind of on our own, we could do it. But Bridgeway Capital's involved, and the Erie Innovation District is involved, and the Idea Fund is involved, and there are other organizations. The Erie Technology Incubator at Gannon, they're involved. Radius, they're involved. I mean, so you start thinking about all of these different organizations that are helping startups kind of get going. We should overshoot 100 easily, right? We should overshoot 1,000 tech workers or 1,000 workers easily. So let's set the goal, let's think big, and let's go for it.
Awesome. Well, it seems like it's very doable.
I think so.
Thank you, Brian, for this awesome interview, and look forward to posting it.
Louis, thanks so much for everything you're doing, and stay involved. Keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to the next time I get to see you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and you have a great rest of your night. Now, I'm just going to be honest. If you didn't learn anything from this, you probably weren't listening well enough. But if you do have more questions or want to learn more from Brian, here is the best ways to contact him, and that is through his email at brianslawin, Slawin, at cnp.benfranklin.org. Or you can keep up with him on Twitter at BenFrankBrian to see all of his social media shares. Or his phone number is 814-898-6650. That's pretty easy to remember. Or if you just want to get to know more about Ben Franklin and how they can help you with your business, then you can be a part of the 10, 100,000 million vision that they have. You can visit their website at cnp.benfranklin.org to learn more. Thank you again, you guys, for watching and listening. Please share this if you found it informative to all of your Erie friends who are looking to start a business or might be in business. Hopefully this helped. This was Louis, your host. Have a great week.